Imagine this for a second. Before you start college, you meet your first boyfriend. You two fall in love, but then you break up. A few years later, you reconnect, you become friends, and you have a very strong friendship for years until you decide to rekindle your romance physically. You think things are good, and then he ghosts you, and then he dies. That's a double ghost. That is exactly what happens in this book, Loved One by Aisha Muharrar. And I am going to be talking about this book with you all today. But before we get started, in case you do not know me, my name is Lee. I'm a writer and a content creator. And I've been wanting to make more book reviews and long form videos on YouTube for quite some time. So I would love for you to subscribe, like this video, and keep watching. I'm so happy that you're here and I'm happy that you clicked on this video. So is this book worth the read? Yes, it is. This video is going to be split into 3 parts: a general summary with no spoilers, and then a spoiler review, which is going to feel like we're on the phone gossiping. And then the third part is going to be a giveaway because I actually have another copy of this book and I would love to give it to one of you. So stay tuned for that. If you do not want to see the spoilers, I will put the time that you can skip to in the video to go straight to the giveaway after the general summary. So let's get into this book, okay? This novel centers around Julia and Gabe and their relationship, friendship, and then what happens to Julia once Gabe dies suddenly. This book has a lot of funny prose and heartbreaking moments. The writing about grief was very, very relatable and it resonated with me. And Aisha is just a really great writer. Some things to know about our protagonist, Julia. She is a Black woman. She is a jewelry designer. She has her own brand called My Grandmother's Collection. And she is 30 years old, I believe. Yeah, she's 30. And her best friend, Gabe, is a musician and his artist name is Separate Bedrooms. The two met during a study abroad program in Barcelona, dated for a bit, broke up. 4 years went by, they reconnected, became friends, and then, like I said, Gabe dies suddenly at the age of 29. This book begins at Gabe's funeral, and I really love what Aisha did in the beginning. She juxtaposed a wedding and a funeral, and the two have many similarities. There was no bride, there was no groom, no seating chart with my name in calligraphy, a blue dot next to Julia, indicating a preference for fish. Like, I love that. That grabbed me. I wanted to know more. I'm like, what is going on? Who died? Girl, what's going on? Okay. Before Gabe's death, he and Julia hooked up. Julia received no closure about this. And at the funeral, we meet Gabe's ex-girlfriend, Elizabeth. And Elizabeth is British. She owns a restaurant and she also does these like beautiful flower arrangements. When Elizabeth sees Julia, it's an icy reception, okay? She turned toward me. Elizabeth, that was her name, and it was definitely her. Her eyes narrowed, I assumed because she was trying to place me. I extended my hand. Elizabeth, hi. We've never met. You're Julia. There was an abrupt downshift in her tone, her words a shove. As she pulled a paper towel from the dispenser, she said, I know who you are. I know exactly who you were to Gabe. Then she walked out, tossing the crumpled paper into the trash as she went. Girl, messy. Elizabeth did not want to talk to Julia, okay? She said, get out of my face. And when I first read that, I'm thinking, okay, so when Gabe and Julia hooked up, was he still with Elizabeth? Like, was he cheating on her? What's going on with that? You know, that happens. And then Julia meets with Gabe's mom, Leora, and Leora really wants some of Gabe's possessions. Since he was a musician, he didn't really have a home base, so he just left his stuff everywhere. Like, it's just, she is like, I need this sheet music that I gave him. I need this guitar that I gave him, this baseball cap. Julia really wants to help Gabe's mom because she is obviously grieving. So she gets a flight to London because that is where Gabe last was living for an extended period of time when he was dating Elizabeth. She gets to London, tries to find the items, and she runs into Elizabeth. And that's where I will leave the general summary, because Elizabeth knows some things about Gabe and she has some secrets, but so does Julia. It really does start to take off after that, like, second or third chapter. Now this is going to be the spoiler section. So if you do not want spoilers and you want to enter the giveaway, skip to this time. Yes, all right. But if you are nosy like me, sit back, let's gossip. I was going to do like a full book review and read you the quotes. I actually did that yesterday. This is a reshoot of this video. But it was taking me a long time. So I'm like, we're just gonna gossip and talk about it. This book is a non-linear format. It goes from the past to the present to the past to the present, and you get to learn more about Julia and Gabe and their relationship and then their friendship. The two met in Barcelona during study abroad. They become fast friends and then they start to date. And one day they are cuddling and Julia notices she can't hear Gabe's heart, and he has this condition where his organs are flipped. And she's like, okay. And he's like, yeah, my mom's getting me a medical bracelet, you know, just in case I'm unconscious. And like, you know, the emergency services people will know that I have this condition. And Julia's like, you aren't wearing the bracelet. You need to wear a bracelet. Like, why aren't you wearing this bracelet? So she's like, you know what? I'm going to take care of it. She makes him a bracelet, y'all. It's this like silver linked chain. It's engraved with his name and condition. Amazing. And he's like, okay, I'm never going to take this off. So she gives it to him. And then like 2 days later, they break up. He's like, girl, I'm leaving Barcelona. I'm going to America. I might be in a band and I need to focus on that. So we're breaking up. And she's like, but I don't want to break up. And he's like, yeah, but we are. So that's that. 4 years go by and they meet randomly in Los Angeles. They catch up. They're just friends again, and they're friends for years. And Gabe's star power starts to grow. He goes from like an indie artist to like a well-known artist. He is like selling out shows. He is headlining, doing all these things. And Julia is also thriving. She went to law school and then she was like, this isn't for me. So she left. And then she started her own jewelry company called My Grandmother's Collection. She is very successful in it. She has worked with actresses and people in LA, and she has a lot of clients. She's doing well for herself. And throughout all of this, Gabe and Julia are both dating people. You know, they've had like on and off again things, and Gabe is dating this woman named Elizabeth for quite some time, and he vents to Julia about her a lot, and they eventually break up. One day, Gabe calls Julia and he's like, hey girl, come out to the desert. I'm in Joshua Tree. Come to my Airbnb and let's hang out. So they go, she goes over there. They hang out. They have this really long conversation at this sushi restaurant. He basically is like asking her if she always thought he was cute. And she's like, yeah, except for that time you had that bowl haircut and you had like a weird thing going on with that. Y'all, I have to find a quote. This is what he says to her. I think you've looked beautiful every year I've known you. I said, okay, these two are flirting. When are y'all going to start kissing? Because I'm not going to lie, this scene lasted for a minute and they're just like going back and forth, talking, reminiscing. And I'm like, if y'all don't kiss, they go back to the Airbnb, right? They start kissing. They wake up in the bed. Child, that's what happens. So we're moving from friendship into romance territory again. They just hang out with each other all that next day, cuddle and do all that stuff. And the next morning, Gabe has to leave early for like a festival tour he's doing. And so they kiss. And pretty much how they leave things is that they are most likely going to start dating, right? So literally a few weeks go by and Julia does not hear from him at all. He won't respond to her texts, her calls. He goes completely silent and ghost. It's a mess. And then one day he just texts her randomly out of the blue, like, I'm gonna be in LA, meet me here. And she's like, boy, you ghosted me. I'm not coming to meet you. And then the next morning she wakes up and she finds out that he has died at the age of 29. He was in the shower, he slipped, hit his head. That's what happened. completely random. So she is grieving. She has no closure about their hookup. She doesn't know what he was going to say to her. It's sad, and I feel bad for her, because can you imagine that? You know, you rekindle with your first love and then they ghost you and then they die. Too much. So then Gabe's funeral happens, and then she speaks to Gabe's mom. Gabe's mom wants these things of his. So Julia is like, well, have you talked to Elizabeth, his most recent ex? And the mom's like, I emailed her 5 times and she didn't respond to me. Elizabeth, open Gmail right now. You not responding to his mama, girl. So Julia's like, I'm gonna fly to London, because that is where Elizabeth lives, and she has a restaurant there. And Julia does some, investigative work online on social media to find out more about Elizabeth. And she finds her restaurant, and she's like, all right, I'm gonna book my hotel 2 blocks away from the restaurant, and then we're just gonna run into each other, and I'll be like, hey girl, where are those items of Gabe? It doesn't really happen like that. They actually end up running into each other randomly in front of this art gallery. And Elizabeth actually apologizes to Julia for her cold reception at the funeral, where she's like, I knew exactly who you were to Gabe. She's like, I'm sorry about that. And she's actually pretty nice to Julia. But these two have tension, understandably. They both dated the same man. They don't know anything about each other. They're not really friends, and they're both grieving. They go to Elizabeth's restaurant, and Julia sees Gabe's guitar on the wall, and she's like, why is that guitar in here? And then Elizabeth is like, well, this is where he played, and so it's just here. And Julia's like, fuck that, I'm taking that guitar. So she grabs it off the wall, and then the next day she goes to see Elizabeth, and she's like, I got the guitar. And Elizabeth's like, I told you not to take that. And so Julia puts it down on the table, and they start bickering, y'all. It was like, And then Elizabeth is just so annoyed with Julia, and she kind of is just trying to pull one over on her. I don't know, but she just blurts out, I'm pregnant. And Julia said, no, you're not. Elizabeth said, I am. Girl. And then she's like, begging Julia, please do not tell Gabe's mom. I'm like, this is too much. So literally they are going back and forth, and then they look back at this table and they don't see the guitar. Someone took it, but then they find it. It was with these teenagers. They thought that it was a free guitar, I guess. And they're like, give us the guitar back. Pretty much Elizabeth and Julia link up, and they are just trying to find Gabe's items and stuff. Oh, I forgot to mention that one of the things that Julia is looking for is Gabe's bracelet that she made him, because he never took it off. And he kept wearing it too, but he was not buried with it, so she doesn't know where it is. At one point, she thinks that Elizabeth has it because she finds this magazine spread and Elizabeth is wearing one that looks just like it. But it turns out that's not what it was. Elizabeth had bought him a new one, and Gabe was like, I ain't wearing that. I'm wearing my original. So, yeah. So, basically, what ends up happening is, so they find most of the items. They actually go talk to one of Gabe's collaborators, who is this weird sleazy guy, and he has the sheet music, but he won't give it back to them because he's like, I could sell this for a profit to some fans. He's a weirdo. And then I think someone that worked with him ends up leaking a few songs of Gabe's that he was still working on, and these songs were actually about him and Julia and their young love in Barcelona. There's a certain line in one of the songs that alerts Gabe's mom to Elizabeth's pregnancy. She's like, oh my god. So she is emailing Elizabeth are you pregnant? And Elizabeth is like, oh my god, Julia, you told her. And Julia's like, I'm tired of being blamed for stuff I didn't do. I didn't do that. And she's like, okay, you didn't do that. Y'all, their relationship throughout the entire book was just really tense. And I was like, both of them need a spa day separately and just alone time. Elizabeth and Julia end up meeting Gabe's mom. Things go well. Gabe's mom and Elizabeth are able to like connect and stuff. It's not like awkward or tense. And then, yeah, they find most of the items and they realize that Gabe's mom has his bracelet. Julia asked for it, but then Gabe's mom is like, this was my son's. It was on him when he was living. I would like to keep it. Julia understands. Fast forward, Elizabeth has her baby. And Julia and Elizabeth start FaceTiming a lot more. She meets the baby over FaceTime. And things get back to normal as much as they can be. Julia is still grieving for her best friend. A year goes by and they have this like memorial for Gabe. And they invite like friends and family and a bunch of fans too. I loved Gabe, I said. My throat felt tight. I searched for the breath in my chest. There it was, and there we were. A glint, a flare, an aurora between our palms. A secret show, and we always know the password. Loved, wrong tense, I corrected myself. I love Gabe, and I opened Tender and Free. And then the last line of this book I thought was gorgeous too, because when you've lost someone, I feel like this, what she says, is very real and resonates. So she says, I observe new flowers in bloom, the unique details of other pedestrians I encounter. Sometimes I pass something that catches my eye or ear, and I think, Gabe would love this. Or remember when, together, we loved that? I pause, grateful to run into him again. So I thought that was gorgeous. Yeah, so this book, I really did like this book. I don't usually get my book recommendations from TikTok, but this was everywhere. And once I saw that this, the author was a woman of color, I really wanted to read it. And then when I saw that it was a Black woman protagonist, I was like, I gotta read this. I think I really liked the first half of the book a lot more than the second half. It's not split into part 1, part 2, but the first half, you are learning a lot about Julia and Gabe, and I felt like it was a bit more vibrant. The second half is just following Julia and Elizabeth and them looking for Gabe's items, which was still really good, but I felt like it dragged a bit. But at the same time, I can kind of appreciate that it dragged because I feel like we were getting a slice of what Julia and Elizabeth must have felt. They did not want to be hanging out together. They did not want to be meeting under the circumstances and looking for Gabe's things. So I get that, and I'm sure that it dragged on for them. So it's I kind of appreciate that it dragged, but I also felt they just had to find his things, and it was just a bit to get through. But yeah, I thought the writings about the grief was really, really good. There was this one line that I will read to you all because it just, I was ooh, it was a gut punch, So she's at the funeral thinking about it. Then the burial, it was wretched. They actually put him in the ground. Wow. The shock of losing someone and the disbelief of it all. There's a lot of beautiful writing in here, to be honest with you all. This one where she's describing the air outside. The air had weight. The day was clinging to us. The moon seemed to appear out of nowhere, like someone had flicked a dime into the sky. Yes, that is what I'm talking about. I love to just read beautiful sentences with elevated language and beautiful descriptors. I love that so much. So yes, highly recommend. And let's talk about the giveaway. As far as the giveaway goes, all you need to do is subscribe to me, like this video, comment something down below, maybe why you're excited to read this book or what you're reading lately, and I will just pick someone randomly and we'll go from there. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for being here. I've been wanting to do more long form videos on YouTube. It is one of my favorite platforms, so I'm just happy to be here. Please subscribe, please like this video, share it with a friend who you think might like this. And yes, you can look forward to more book reviews. I'm going to show y'all how I annotate my books because I annotated the heck out of this. We can have some coffee chats where we gossip and catch up, child. I can show you my nighttime routine, what I do to relax. let's have fun. So like I said, if that sounds good to you, subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.